The next question, the member for Kiiwetinoong.
Miigwech, Mr. Speaker. My question this morning is for the acting premier. Last week, this government announced the new curriculum for Indigenous studies after abruptly cancelling Indigenous curriculum writing sessions last summer. But Indigenous leaders like the Sinawaski Nation were not met prior to the release of the curriculum. Updating the Indigenous curriculum was a recommendation from the TRC. It should have been developed by Indigenous communities. But to make matters worse, Mr. Speaker, the government is making new Indigenous curriculum an elective, not a mandatory course. Why does the government think that Ontario students do not need to learn about residential schools or First Nation treaty rights?
The acting premier.
The Minister of Education.
Referred to the Minister of Education.
Well, thank you very much, Speaker. I very much appreciated the opportunity to be in Thunder Bay and Sioux Lookout this past week. And I was pleased to join the member opposite at the opening of Sioux North as well. It was a great celebration. And the whole week is really about celebration because the fact of the matter is this is the first time ever there's been an absolutely dedicated effort to make sure the Indigenous curriculum is developed. And I have to impress upon the fact that we have given students the opportunity to take many of our new courses, and they'll take them and they'll be counted as compulsory studies required to graduate. And, you know, in talking to the Director of Education as well, he agreed that many of the courses that are offered are mandatory. You know, it's a celebration that we have finally brought forward a suite of 10 courses that touch on the realities of Indigenous.
Thank you. Thank you. Supplementary question.
Thank you.
Last week, also, Grand Chief Alvin Fiddler stated that learning about the colonial history of this country should not be optional. And as long as we make these courses electives, the system will continue to fail all students. As a First Nations person, it's hard for me to accept this government is committed to meaningful reconciliation when they have cut funding to Indigenous culture and arts, significantly cutting the budget of the Ministry of Indigenous Affairs and cancelling the Indigenous curriculum writing sessions. Will the government today, Mr. Speaker, make an appropriate curriculum on residential schools, treaties, Indigenous people's contributions, a mandatory education requirement in Ontario, as stated in the TRC calls to action number 62? I need a simple answer, please.
Yes. Thank you. The members to please take their seats. Minister of Education to reply.
Thank you very much. And Speaker, our new courses that have been introduced as of last week, again, are going to be counted as compulsory studies in literature, in law, in humanities, politics, and history. And you know, when I was up north, I heard a lot of support for the decision I made to expand the grad coach program as well. Do you know, people are very, very much absolutely applauding the fact that we actually expanded our grad coach program so that we can ensure our Indigenous students are graduating and having a great pathway forward. And also, like I said last week, if the opposition cared to listen, I heard.
The opposition will come to order. Member for Waterloo has to come to order. Allow the minister to finish her reply.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, because if the opposition would listen, they would hear loud and clear that I had a great week up north. And Grand Chief Alvin Fiddler and I had a wonderful discussion at the airport, and I'm pleased to say that starting in June, we'll be meeting with our Indigenous partners and working with them on an approach that could include future curriculum revisions. And this is good news. We had a great trip last week. What am I saying? We had a great trip last week. We're looking forward to what we're doing in the future. And the fact of the matter is we're getting it right. People know I care. And
Thank you very much.